What better way to welcome spring into your garden than by growing a few pots of daffodils? Their colourful, cheerful flowers will brighten any spring day, and they're easy to grow from bulbs planted during the autumn, any time from when their bulbs first go on sale in August and around September right the way through October and November into December. Of course, daffodils, or narcissus, as you'll often find them listed in the bulb catalogues, can be planted directly into your flower borders. But I love growing them in pots that you can bring nearer your home or use to decorate your patio and garden. In this video, I'll show you how to plant daffodil bulbs step by step, and also share some tips for caring for your bulbs and hopefully ensure they'll flower again in future years. There are dozens of varieties of daffodil available at garden centres and lots of other spring flowering bulbs you could grow with them, which can all be planted during this autumn period. Choose carefully, and you can have daffodils in flower as early as January or February in some areas, but most start flowering through March and April. But let's start by looking at some of my favourite daffodils for pots and borders. Jetfire is another dwarf daffodil with bold orange trumpets surrounded by yellow petals. It's sturdy and perfect for pots, but establishes well in the garden too, so it can be naturalised and grow back year after year. This is one of my favourites. It's a dwarf, compact variety of narcissus or daffodil called Tete-a-Tete. Tiny little golden flowers, dwarf and compact, great for the front of a border or for patio pots like these. And what I usually do is to plant up some extras. I plant a range of bulbs up in the autumn, around about September, October, November time, in small pots, and then if I find any gaps in my borders, I can just pop these in to add some extra spring colour. Blue always contrasts well with gold, so why not plant some muscari, commonly called grape hyacinth, alongside your yellow or golden daffodils. Minnow is a multi-headed daffodil, like Tete-a-Tete, but with even more small flowers at the tip of each stem, often producing clusters of up to 5 scented flowers with a pale creamy petal surrounding a small golden central cup. I'll show you how I planted my minnow later in this video, and these dwarf daffodils flower around April time, growing to about 10 inches in height. Thalia is a multi-headed white daffodil, producing slightly drooping, slender flowers with a long trumpet and reflexed white petals. I think it's very elegant, with its white flowers standing out clearly in the spring garden and growing slightly taller in pots to reach about 16 inches or so in height. For impressive displays, do plant in generous clumps. Ice Follies is a large cupped daffodil with white petals around a buttery yellow trumpet with a lovely open frilly shape. As it ages, it fades to pure white. Flowering around March, this daffodil grows a little taller to around 20 inches tall and develops into a large clump to put on a bold display. Tamara is another large cupped daffodil like Ice Follies with pale yellow outer petals and a golden central cup with a ruffled rim to it. In my garden it flowered towards the end of March into early April. And lastly, I've grown Sun Disc, which is classified as a John Killer daffodil with a wide spreading cup or corona that's actually split into a number of segments. It's quite short, only growing to about a foot or so in height, and flowers a little bit later, probably around April. All these daffodils can be grown in pots, but there are plenty more captivating varieties to choose from too, so search out and see what you can find in the catalogues or garden centres in your area. I do hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel by clicking the button below. There's plenty more inspiring videos on my channel, Adam's Gardening Guides. Thank you. I'm going to plant my minnow multi-headed daffodils in these tall terracotta pots with a drainage hole in the bottom. Put a decent layer of compost in the base of the pot and fill them up, probably about half or 2/3 full. You want to plant the bulbs so they're about 4 or 5 inches below the top of the pot. Use a good multi-purpose peat-free compost for the job. Once you've got a good layer of compost in there, start planting the bulbs. And I'm going to just spread the bulbs out evenly over the surface of the compost, spacing them a little bit apart. Don't want the bulbs to be touching, but about 2 or 3 inches apart is absolutely fine. And plant really generously. The more bulbs you can get in a pot, the bigger and bolder the flowering display will be. As far as planting depth is concerned with bulbs, just see how tall the bulb is. If a bulb is about 2 inches tall, then cover it with twice that depth of compost. So a 2-inch bulb, cover with 4 inches of compost. If the bulb is smaller, let's say about 1 inch or so tall, then cover it with 2 inches of compost. That's the general rule for planting bulbs. And as always with bulbs, plant them the right way up. You'll notice that the bulb has a pointed tip, which is the growing tip, and a basal plate. So make sure that the basal plate, where the roots develop, is downwards and the pointed tip is upwards. Once you've planted all the bulbs, spread on a further layer of compost. Just push it down gently with your fingertips, and you want the top of the compost just to rest 1 inch or so below the rim of the pot, which makes watering much easier. Then water the bulbs in and stand the pots in a sheltered position for the winter. You don't want the pots to freeze solid, so a sheltered position towards the back of the patio is ideal. Then once we get round to March time, the bulbs will start poking their heads through the compost and put on a wonderful flowering display. And then you can position the pots wherever you'd like to enjoy through the spring months. Sometimes in the autumn, you haven't decided quite where you want to plant your spring flowering bulbs, or your patio pots are full of summer bedding which hasn't yet finished. So I plant bulbs up in aquatic baskets. You can get round ones or circular ones of different shapes and sizes. Put a good layer of compost in the bottom. Space the bulbs evenly over the top of the compost, just putting them about 2 or 3 inches apart, right up to the edges of the baskets. Then cover with more compost. Water well and place these baskets in a sheltered spot for the winter. And then once a position becomes free in a border, or you've got an empty patio pot, you can sink the aquatic basket of bulbs down into its position, and it will flower in the spring. Once flowering is over, you can remove the basket, bulbs and all, and replant it for summer. Or you can move the basket from the border, keep it watered and fed, and let the bulbs die down naturally, and store the bulbs to replant the following autumn. You can do exactly the same thing with tulip bulbs. Fill the aquatic basket up about 1/3 to 1/2 full with compost, spread out the tulip bulbs, cover with more compost and water, and use those bulbs to fill in gaps in your flower borders where you'd like some tulips to be in flower in the spring, or just sink the aquatic basket down into one of your patio pots for a flowering display to enjoy during April and May. If you care for your daffodils, they can easily flower the following year, so keep your spring bulbs watered and fed. And once flowering is over, don't let the bulbs waste energy forming seed heads. Instead, pick those seed heads off and let the bulbs die down naturally. You want all of those food reserves to go down into the bulb. So don't cut off green foliage. Allow all your bulbs to die down naturally, and hopefully the food will have stocked up the bulbs so that they'll have a good supply and the bulbs will be a good size to flower again in future years. So there you have it. I hope this video has given you some ideas on varieties of bulbs you could choose to brighten up your own garden in spring, and some practical tips on planting them in pots or baskets to give you colour in your patio and around your borders. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Adam's Gardening Guides. Check out the channel, there's dozens more videos on the flower garden and the kitchen garden to give you advice to get the very best from your garden throughout the year. Happy gardening!